It's time now for a question for Stan Joyner. And you'll have 2 minutes, Mr. Joyner, and then your opponents will have a minute to respond. With the increased competitive pressures from Fayette and Marshall Counties, how will Collierville continue to compete for residential and business growth?
Glad you asked that question. You know, there is competition on our borders, but I think the answer to that is to be involved in what's happening in Fayette County, to be involved in what's happening in Marshall County, and also to be involved in what's happening on our western border with Germantown and the city of Memphis. We are in a regional economy, as it's been said many times. We need to be concerned about what's going on in the region. We need to be definitely concerned about what's happening on our eastern border, as was mentioned earlier tonight by one of the candidates for alderman about I-385 and I-269 coming in on just about the county line out there. We need to be very concerned with what Piperton's views are and be willing to work with them on many of the property owners who own property, the same property owner owns property in Fayette County that owns property in Shelby County. We need to take on, I think, an attitude of cooperation with our neighbors and an attitude where we can see that both communities can gain, both communities can benefit by economic development on each of our boundaries. So I don't look at it as a we against them type thing, an us against Piperton or us against Olive Branch or that type thing. Many businesses locate in areas for a number of different reasons. Collierville offers great quality of life benefits for the workers who would be brought in by those industries, and I think we can stand right with them on development standards and that type thing. There are some industries, though, that it's much more cost effective for them to locate where the design standards are not as strict as they are in Collierville, where the taxes are not as high, and you know, for other reasons it's easy to live here and to commute back and forth to those places.
All right, and our first rebuttal goes to Tom Allen.
Would you repeat the question?
Be happy to. With the increased competitive pressures from Fayette and Marshall counties, how will Collierville continue to compete for residential and business growth?
Well, number one, we got to recognize that we got competition. That's your first problem. I lived in Germantown for 17 years, and they said Collierville would never amount to nothing. And if we have that same attitude, that's what will happen to us in the next 5 or 10 or 15 years. And how we can overcome that is to get a group of smart business people and residents together and say, here's what we're facing in the future. We need some help, because no one person has got the answer. Because the first thing I did when I joined the board as alderman, I met with a group of business people. And with that, they can help you solve the problem, because we got competition coming up. And if we don't recognize that, we're going to be left holding the boat one of these days. And that's not being pessimistic. That's being realistic. Thank you.
Mr. House?
I think we have the reputation of being a community that solves its problems and fulfills the limited purpose of government, security and protection. It's a safe place to come and raise your kids or your grandkids. My opponent says he's not for limited government. That's not the smart choice. The smart choice is limited government, cutting taxes. And I'm afraid what we've heard tonight that separates us is he's for big government, I'm for limited government, and big government means more taxes. We're going to have a shortfall of probably $2.5 million. You're going to have to limit government, or you're going to have a tax increase. I'm not for taxes being increased. Ronald Reagan said, you know, the government will love to tax you every chance it gets. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it, he said. If it stops moving, subsidize it. Government needs to be limited and get out of our business so we can go about raising our families and being entrepreneurs.